It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join News Director Paul David and News Editor Philip Catafamo as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics in Yavapai County that affect all our lives. And now here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Paul David. As always, it is great to have you in studio with us today. We are sitting down for a recap of our wildfire season with Prescott and Coconino National Forest Zone Fire Management Officer Brian Steinhardt. This will be, I think, Brian's third time with us this year talking with us about wildfire season. We had you in the spring, we had you in early summer, and now here we are, we're into the fall and creeping up on winter, and we're going to be talking about just how the wildfire season went. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing well, Paul. Thanks for asking. How about yourself?
I am great. Thanks for being here with me today. I definitely like to, I've talked to the Coconino National Forest and kind of got a recap from them already about wildfire season, but I definitely want to get Prescott National Forest in here. And I know you're on both forests, so that's very helpful. For me this year, wildfire season was very different than it ever has been in the past 30 years that I've been doing news here at Yavapai Broadcast. I've never had the amount of evacuations, pre-evacuations, lightning strike fires that joined together and became large, massive, complex fires. Fires had started out as small acreage and didn't seem like they were a big concern, but then by the next day, they're just booming, exploding, and running across the landscape. And without having any the winter wasn't great. We didn't have a couple of years where we didn't have any monsoons. And I remember early this year, Debbie Maneely from Prescott National Forest put out a press release about the juniper die-off that was taking place along Highway 89 in kind of the Paulden Ash Fork area. And that got me, you and I talked about this last time you were in, it got me thinking about, I drive I-17 and I was seeing that same die-off happening in those juniper trees out there. And I just kind of felt like, wow, it's going to be a heck of a wildfire season, and it did. So if we can go back, are you able to tell me how many wildfires we actually had on the Prescott and Coconino National Forest this year?
I don't have the exact numbers for the Coconino. I know on the Prescott, I believe it was 45 fires, which, doesn't seem like a whole lot. And in theory, it really isn't that many fires. But when you look at some of the size of those fires, that's where the things change quite a bit. On the Coconino, I would suspect the numbers at least 2 to 3 times higher. There's far more activity with regards to lightning and human-caused fires on the Coconino for the high elevation recreation that people come up for. So, but I don't have their total numbers, but definitely a far more busy fire season in terms of size and types of fires.
Wouldn't you say we were getting stretched a little thin with resources there for a while with the Backbone and the Raphael? Those were our 2 big fires here in northern Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. Those are the big ones.
Yeah.
Seemed like resources were getting stretched pretty thin between human-caused, because we had human-caused fires and then lightning-caused fires. That first couple of weeks, people are like, oh yeah, the monsoon's here, we're going to get some monsoon rain. And that first couple of weeks of monsoon, I never like it because it's mostly lightning and not so much rain. And we saw that this year, very evident. Especially, I want to say the Raphael fire was probably the one I noticed the most because it was, I think, 5 lightning spark fires that combined eventually. Yeah,
so it was kind of interesting this year. It looked like predictions were saying that the monsoons were going to come in early. That was some of the projections. And of course we never know until it happens. Those early storms, though, like you said, were predominantly lightning with very little rain. Backbone started first. That was a lightning-caused fire. And of course its location, it's a 1-hour drive off the pavement just to get to where the fire was. So by the time we even got out there, it was already 200-300 acres and growing, and that was at 1 o'clock in the morning. So, we were already losing at that point. And then you realize that surrounding us, further to the south, we had the Telegraph Fire and a few other things going on. So resources had gotten stretched to a point. And then with the Raphael fire, that was 5 separate fires that kind of came together. There was 3 additional fires on the other side of the highway at the same time, all from lightning. And, when you've got a finite number of resources at the time, and then there's a delay for getting more in there, and these fires were taking more resources than were initially anticipated, and it's not something that's unforeseen. It's just you don't expect that volume at one time. And so we got stretched thin for a little while, and then of course the numbers picked back up as we started to get teams into place and get things staffed. And it's just where these fires occurred, and it's funny because both the Raphael and the Backbone was pretty much on my zone within the Coconino National Forest there, and then the Raphael came off the Prescott side and onto parts of my zone, and then the Flag Zone, and of course the Kaibab National Forest. So we had 3 national forests involved in that one, and the location of those is partly why they were so difficult. It's not easy access into those pieces of ground. Sycamore Canyon, if anybody's familiar with it, is a challenging piece of country to get into. Also, Creek is challenging for the Backbone area. So it was one of those things where it was just a perfect setup, if you will, for large fires to occur with the dry winter and the previous monsoon that was not very monsoonal. And then we had the year prior where all the grass had grown up. Everything was just primed and ready. And then you add in those drought-killed junipers that we've been talking about earlier in the spring, summer. And there was your fuel profile for that Raphael fire to be able to get established and come out of the juniper like it did.
I was going to ask you about that because that's why I brought the junipers up, because I did notice, and when Debbie set that press release out, it was like hundreds, if not thousands, of those trees had died off and were just sitting there. Those are extremely explosive. I know the chaparral, if it gets in chaparral, dead, old, dry chaparral, that's also very explosive with just the oils and stuff there in that wood. The juniper, it's got to be kind of the same sort of a fire, but I would think bigger and just as hot and spread just as quickly through those junipers.
Exactly. And, you got all those little red needles that have come off of there, that are sitting there waiting to fall. Well, you catch that with those, from the heat that's coming off, the convective heat currents, and they're ignited and they just loft out just even a few hundred feet. Well, that just continues to propagate that fire and continue to help it spread further and further and further. It was just literally perfect conditions for a fire of that magnitude. But when you look at things around here, especially in our pinyon juniper woodland community, and you see historically that that's not unusual for what occurred. We get a drought type cycle, the bugs become successful and drought kill of those types, the pinyons and the junipers there. And then a fire comes in and basically, baseball analogy, bats cleanup and takes care of all that dead, dying fuel, and then resets it to begin anew with, grasses coming in, followed by some, forbs. And then finally you get a whole nother juniper and pinyon overstory that grows back into the area. It's the cycle of Mother Nature doing her thing.
Yeah, I kind of felt that way too. All those dead trees, I knew they were going to burn if a fire got in there, and it would probably burn very quickly as well. Let's take our first break. Prescott and Coconino National Forest Zone Fire Management Officer Brian Steinhardt is with us in studio. We're kind of recapping the wildfire season on both the Prescott and Coconino National Forest. Stick around, Countywide back in just a couple minutes.
Who doesn't dream of home improvements? Perhaps your kitchen, the real living room. Maybe the bathroom, where you bookend your day. Langstrand Contracting is your one-stop shop from tear down to finishing touches. With 35 years of experience, Chris and his team will work with you to match your family's style and budget. Call Langstrand Contracting today for guidance in bringing your vision to life.
Your carpet is the largest air filter in your home, trapping dust, dirt, and germs from the air that your family members breathe, even the furriest ones.
That's why it's important to keep your carpet and tile clean and hygienic with regular cleanings by Zero-Res. Zero-Res uses state-of-the-art technology and ZR water, not soap or harsh chemicals, so zero residue is left on your home surfaces.
Schedule your appointment today because a clean home is a healthy home. Visit ZeroResNorthernArizona.com.
The mouth is the gateway to the digestive system. Studies indicate a correlation between oral health and full body health. Regular cleanings and checkups can help protect you. New patients are welcome at Arizona Smile Designers in Cottonwood. There's a full smile worth of services all offered under one roof. Whitening and cosmetic to implants and smile reconstruction. Find out more or request an appointment online at azsmiledesigners.com.
Terrifying jobs, high-flying linemen, take 3.
Josh, this is an absolutely terrifying job. Why do you do it?
It's a very demanding job, but very rewarding and exciting.
How much energy are you actually working with up there?
500,000 volts of electricity.
It's definitely not my line of work. Does anything shock you?
Yeah, distracted drivers terrify me.
Welcome back to Countywide. We're talking with Prescott and Coconino National Forest Zone Fire Management Officer Brian Steinhardt. We were just talking during the break there about the other fires. Brian brought up the Telegraph Fire, and then I brought up the Cornville Fire. Let's hit the Cornville Fire really fast, and I'm hoping you can kind of update us. People are going to be angry if I don't ask you how Fossil Creek stood up to the Backbone Fire. But the Cornville Fire, we were talking just before the break about how Mother Nature kind of comes in and, okay, all these trees have died. They're going to clean them up. Lightning bolt hits. Boom, those trees burn off. And, you know, that whole cycle of life starts all over again for those trees and for that ground. So it's a benefit. It's a great thing. The Backbone Fire went down into the Fossil Creek area. Fossil Creek closed and is still closed, and I think it might be closed most of next year as well. Can you kind of paint a picture for us as to just how bad the Backbone Fire damaged the Fossil Creek area?
So the biggest challenge that we had with the Backbone Fire was its location where it started. For those that are familiar with the area, Ike's Backbone is a narrow ridge that runs between Childs and Fossil Creek and takes you right down to the Verde River. It happened right at the southernmost tip of Ike's Backbone, hence the name Backbone. And so it went literally from the confluence of the Fossil Creek Verde River all the way up past the waterfall in Fossil Creek proper, which is quite a ways. And then, of course, it moved west all the way through the Towel Peaks and off into the flats to the west there quite a ways. So the area, and that's all inventory roadless area. There is no access into that piece of ground. You have the main road going down to Fossil Creek, the 708, and then you have the 502 taking you to Childs. Beyond that, there's no other roads in the area. And so just because of that factor and the topography that's in there, that fire had the opportunity to move around where it really wanted to. As far as the effects in there, it's kind of mixed. As you go up the drainage proper of Fossil Creek, there's certain areas that were definitely hit a little bit harder than others, based on what kind of fuels were in there. But the riparian area seems to be primarily intact. We won't know for sure. You got the first order fire effects, which is the fire moving through and burning everything off. Then you have secondary fire effects post-fire where heat kills the cambium of the tree, so then the trees die and things like that. So we should be seeing more of that now, and in the next 4 to 6 months, we'll see more like that. There's still a lot of ongoing research and investigation into what that riparian area will look like in the future. But because of the danger with regards to flash flooding and mudslides, we've had a lot of the roads washed out repeatedly. So they're constantly in there trying to keep the roads opened up. So until we feel that it's safe for the public to get back in there with very little threat to their personal safety, we're just not going to open that up for right now. But the hope is to get in there in the next few months and get some more pictures and hopefully get those out to the public to kind of show them what this looks like now and what it will look like moving into the future. For the folks that have a particular idea of what everything looks like, though, with the junipers that were between the main 708 road and the waterfall, for example, though, with all the juniper that used to be there along the creek, that's really not there anymore. So you're going to have to get a new picture in your mind of what that's going to look like.
Oh, wow. Okay, so time will tell. Time's going to tell on that one. Back to what I was saying when we first came back from the break, you were talking about how Mother Nature steps in and does its thing and takes care of the forest. The Cornville Fire, I drive by that a couple of times each week. And it was real obvious when that fire had happened in Cornville. It was just, about 2 miles east. There's a pull out there of Cornville, and then the fire spread from there back towards the mountains and north towards what would be the village of Oak Creek there. And as you drive through there, at the beginning, you could see the burn scar quite easily. But I'll tell you what, you'd be hard-pressed to find that burn scar today after the monsoon came in, and it's almost as if nothing had happened out there.
Yeah, and the Cornville Fire, unfortunately, that was human caused. We never did locate the who. We were pretty certain of the what. It was probably dragging chains because it started right off the edge of the road. But yeah, it's interesting when you have those grass fuel models like what that fire predominantly was. You get a good monsoon and that grass comes right back up, and it's actually the most vibrant part of that whole area. It was the greenest of everything around it because it was all fresh, new. There's no dead grass component in there anymore, and it looks amazing. You're like, oh my gosh, this is the Arizona version of Ireland kind of thing going on.
Right.
But at the same time, now next year, next spring, next summer, I have a whole new fuel profile again, and it's
right.
ready to burn.
Right.
We
talk about that every time. Yeah.
Yeah.
We talk about that every time with you guys.
Cycle. Yeah. It's just an ongoing cycle, and that's the thing I think is probably most frustrating for us, though, is the careless human starts that are preventable. That's the thing that makes the job more challenging. Things like the Cornville Fire adjacent to homes, where we're looking at a lot of evacuations in a very short amount of time. I mean, that fire was moving. I was there. I was actually the incident commander shortly after it had gotten established because we needed to move it up to the next level. So I had to take that over. And it was literally a game of hopscotch is what we were calling it, as you moved from house to house to house to protect and push the fire away from it and get it out of the neighborhood. And once we could get it out of the neighborhood and up into the hills, then we felt that we had a chance to do something with it. It's you take that other element out of the equation because there's a whole nother aspect that goes into your firefighting when you start adding homes and businesses and infrastructure and the public. There's a lot of other elements that come into play versus just being out in the woods.
Is there any one thing you can attribute to the turning points on these fires? Because they're real scary when they first get started. A lot of billowing smoke, and I know the teams come in and things kind of calm down, but then there's still the threat of the houses and the evacuations and pre-evacuations. What kind of turns these fires around to where you can kind of look back and say, okay, we got this one? What happens?
It's different for every fire. Some of them, they'll start to get moving on you, like the Cornville Fire. I'll use that as the first example. Boy, we thought for sure once it got just to the north of those last homes there that we were going to pinch it off. And if you ever looked at the fire map, there's this narrow little window that we just couldn't close the door enough, and it squirted through and then took off up the hillside. And it was one of those, dang it moments because we really felt like we had it right there. The turning point on that one was when we got more aircraft and we were able to get some more retardant out in front of it, and then the sun went down. And we got that retardant put in right as the sun was going behind the mountain, and that made all the difference in the world. And that's where we got successful there. And so if you look at Fossil, for example, or Raphael, things there that change, that help, is topography sometimes. Sometimes it's the fuels, and a lot of times it's weather. Fossil, the way it was moving off to the west for a while there, there was a lot of concern about Verde Lakes and that area becoming impacted, and it looked like it was going to. And then we got these stiff west winds for a couple days, and it blew it back on itself and literally stalled it and gave the folks time to get in there and pick up the edge. So that was a weather scenario that played out, that helped out. Raphael, and you've got the Sycamore Canyon drainage, and it was running all those drainages, which, that's just funnels basically for the fire. So topography wasn't really helping until it got up on the top. It got onto the flats and the mesas, and they were able to do their burn operations and send fire back towards the main fire from existing roads and whatnot. And again, the weather helped there. There was some cloud cover that came in for a few days. Aviation was a part of it. So a lot of it really is looking for those things to change. The fuels become easier to work with. The topography is a little more friendly, or the weather just gives you that perfect window to be able to do something that otherwise would have been very challenging to accomplish. So that's what you're looking for when you get into these larger fires, is you're looking for those windows and seeing where you can be most effective.
All right, let's take our second break. Prescott and Coconino National Forest Zone Fire Management Officer Brian Steinhardt in studio with us today, recapping our wildfire season. Stick around, Countywide back in just a couple minutes.
Terrifying jobs. Bull rider, take 2.
Cliff, this seems like a really terrifying job. Why do you do it?
I love protecting the bull riders when they get bucked up.
How big are these bulls?
12 to 2,200 pounds of pure muscle.
You're not cowed by any of this, obviously. Is there anything that scares you?
Yeah, distracted drivers terrify me.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
The EPA says C&B Construction ranks in the top 1% nationally. C&B Construction invites you to see what energy efficiency and indoor air quality can be. We have won another Department of Energy Innovation Award, and C&B Construction is the only contractor in the country to win 6 consecutive EPA Indoor Air Plus awards. Experience our zero-energy, move-in ready homes at Crossroads at Mingus.
C&B Construction, locally respected, nationally recognized. Find out more at C&B Homes.com.
Award-winning Soundbites Grill is an entertainment restaurant located in Uptown Sedona at the Hyatt Pinion Point Resort. Open for lunch and dinner, featuring fresh fish, all-natural hand-cut beef, even a full vegan menu. Family-friendly, open 11:30 to 9, late dining on Friday and Saturday. Soundbites Grill has some of the best views of the Sedona Red Rocks. Offers world-class entertainment, food, fun, and music.
Welcome back to Countywide. Just a few minutes left in the program. Brian Steinhardt from the Prescott and Coconino National Forest is with us in studio today. I don't want to forget about the Baghdad Fire either. We had the Baghdad Fire this year, which devastated a bunch of homes down in Baghdad too. So that was another horrible fire that occurred this year. Now you touched on it, Brian, a little bit just in the last segment there, but I've always called it the damned if you do, damned if you don't. If we don't have a monsoon and we don't have the grass growth, well, now we got the hot weather, and so whatever's laying there from the year before is going to burn, and it's very dangerous. But this year, we had one heck of a monsoon, 200% of normal in many locations. And if you drive up and down I-17, I was telling you on the camera break, we've got flowers in my yard right now. I'm 6'6", and those flowers are taller than me. So everything's like, here's the rain, let's grow, let's do it. So I got to think, everything growing this year is likely going to be a problem for us either later this year or into next year.
And that's how we look at it. You know, I look forward to the monsoons because I do like to see the rain. I like to see the rejuvenation of everything. And then I also start to cringe because it's like, oh, great. Now we did have this really robust monsoon, and I've got a whole new fuel profile to deal with this coming fall, this coming spring, you know. And so, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
And you just have to continue you're constantly planning for the what if scenario based on what everything looks like out there. So there's a lot of time that's spent driving around, looking at those conditions, coming up with ideas and plans and thoughts about it. If a fire were to happen in this particular area, this is what I think we would want to go do based on these kinds of fuels that we're seeing. You know, like you talk about grass, flowers that are taller than you, for example. I'm not so sure I want to engage a field of that. I think I want to step away a little bit because that's going to be very, very hot. So you start to game those things out so that you have a better plan moving forward. But it's always a planning and preparation phase, regardless of the time of year. We're in the middle of fire season in June, July, and then the monsoons are coming in, and we're right back into planning for what do we do with this fuel that's now going to grow, you know, all this wonderful vegetation. Never-ending process.
Never ending, and it's we remind everybody too, there is no end to our wildfire season. It is wildfire season year round. I'm back on the weekends now. We're out of time, Brian, but I'm back on the weekends now, Friday, Saturday, going back through the Prescott, Coconino, Kaibab, and Tonto National Forest. You guys' front page always shows what fire danger is. So I do a quick recap of that and say right now it's low to moderate pretty much across northern Arizona. But of course, put your campfires out. You can't leave them burning, all that good stuff.
We just changed to high fire danger here in the Verde Valley.
Oh, did you? Okay. So I'll be updating that tomorrow then.
Our conditions have gotten there.
Okay, so it doesn't take long. We had a booming monsoon, but it's already drying out. So that's all we got time for. Brian, thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate your time. That is our Today's Countywide. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and we will talk to you again next time.